Women on a green mission. Follow along as two friends document their unfurling permaculture journeys.
Join our chats each week where we will be sharing how we and others apply the ethics and principles of permaculture to our gardens and daily life.
We're no experts. We're at the start of our journey, learning and fumbling our way to a greener life. You're guaranteed to witness a few successes, plenty of failures, laughs and swearing. We'd love your company along the way.
Hey, you're listening to the Practical Permaculture Podcast with
Jo Flinton
and Elise. We're live here together.
Finally! This is so nice.
I know.
So much better than looking at each other through a screen. It's fantastic. But we're going to be looking at you for those of you who are watching, but we're also going to be looking at each other the whole time. So, you know, you're just going to be a part of it.
So I rocked up at, oh wait, before we start, where are we?
Oh, we are on Wanneroo country at Leakenfield, New South Wales.
Lovely. So I pulled up here at Jo's house on the weekend.
Yeah, on Sunday.
Yep. And I've been here all week. So I'm just like parked outside on the front lawn with the turkeys and the animals and chilling out.
Everything's running around.
Yeah, in the front paddock. So we've been here together. So our what's happening this week will be a joint one.
It is, yeah. Well, and what have we been doing? We've been baking.
Yes.
We've been cooking.
Yes. Using up zucchinis. We'll put in our Facebook group
zucchinis,
an epic zucchini chocolate cake recipe, and Joe's son didn't even know there was zucchini in it.
Yeah, he had no idea.
Wouldn't tell.
The adult son, but he absolutely loved it.
Beetroot brownies where you can taste the beetroot and stuff. Like, no offense to beetroot, but like, I'm eating chocolate cake. I want to eat chocolate.
I want to meet the beetroot that's getting offended. That's what I want to do.
True. Good point. Joe's turkeys have taken a liking to my feet.
Yeah, Tom wants to make baby feet with Elise.
I was scared of him at first, and then I became friendly, and now we're like
too friendly. He's sort of doing this little shimmy thing and like, you know, kind of running his wing up your leg, and he's violating you, really, isn't he? He's like, personal space, man.
He was chasing me yesterday. And now there's a snake also in the back.
Yeah, we did have some excitement. We had, a red belly black snake that was, on the back deck. I was on the phone to a friend and I looked and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's like this little snake head that's popping up. And I thought, he's only small. He might be like 20 to 30 centimeters. And then he finally came out and I'm like, wow, okay, like you're like 50 to 60 centimeters. You're a big dude. So I don't know if he's moved on. We weren't able to get him out. We're hoping that he's moved on. We've sprayed peppermint. Yeah. We use peppermint oil as a deterrent for rodents as well. So we're hoping that, he'll get the hint and go, I'm not into peppermint. He's moved on. So
yeah, and we've had lovely meals and a few drinks a couple nights this week.
I know, you made me an amazing cocktail the other night.
We've got into the silly season a bit early.
We have. But I'll tell you what, that cocktail, it was good. It was a little bit lethal. Mind you, we haven't had many, but
coconut margaritas.
Maybe put that recipe on there too. Okay. Coconut margaritas and zucchini chocolate cake. Really good.
Good combo.
Absolutely. All right, so what are we talking about this week?
So we'll launch into the episode this week. We're not doing an interview. We're doing a kind of spotlight, I guess.
Yeah.
A bit of a, not deep dive, but a bit of an intro into one of the ethics of permaculture. So we're looking at earth care.
Yeah, we thought we'd share with you what earth care looks like for us. I mean, you can go on to lots of websites and there's, one that we'll share with you, and it really does a deep dive into the meaning of the earth care principle itself and what the pure intent was, I suppose you could say. But from our perspective, again, this is all context based. So it's what it looks like for us and how that's developed for us. And, we want you to go and do some research for yourself and find out what earth care really looks like for you too.
So we'll go into it a little bit, but yeah, definitely after. You can also jump into the Facebook group because we can keep unpacking it there. We might have skimmed something that you want to know more about, or something that we may have not considered that you're thinking about. So it's a good place for us to kind of continue those conversations and go deeper after the episodes go live.
Absolutely.
So join us on there. So earth care. What was the we've got the screen up here. If we're looking up here, we're not just zoning out.
Some notes for you.
So earth care, that's the definition from
so that's from permacultureprinciples.com. And I wanted to I suppose, redirect you to that area as well. They've got a ton of free resources, and you can actually get the Essence of Permaculture booklet, and it's got this definition and more in there. But their definition essentially is the earth is a living, breathing entity. And without ongoing care and nurturing, there will be consequences that's going to be far too big to ignore. And that's really the truth. I mean, so summarizing that down for us, essentially what that means is do no harm to the earth. You know, walk softly.
Just this, the smallest footprint. Like sometimes it's not possible to have no impact. Like, you talk about no dig principles, for instance. You do that initial groundbreaking with no dig, and then you build the soil up. So there's always going to be some kind of impact you're having.
Exactly. I mean, even using that example, for some people, they will choose to dig because it's appropriate for their location or for their context or their soil or their particular situation.
I think it's about mitigating that. Like whatever impact you are having, then having a counter impact that makes that more positive or negligible.
That's a really great point. Absolutely.
Because you're always going to have some kind of impact, whether it's your waste or digging, or you are doing something. So you're going to have an impact because you're doing amendments of some sort to the ground.
Absolutely.
Or if we're not talking about gardening and we're talking about earth care in terms of buying things, like you can't just not buy things. You have to buy things. So then what's the counteraction to be able to negate or balance the impact you're having on the earth?
That's it. Yeah. Where's your positive impacts and your positive influences, as you said, that are the counterbalancing? Because and it's nearly impossible. I mean, just by the virtue of us being on the earth, we are having an impact in some way, shape, or form, and that goes for every person. It goes for every animal. It goes for ask the bug that's been eaten by the lizard whether the lizard being here has had an impact on their life. So again, it's all swings and roundabouts, but it's looking at how do we minimize the negative impact that we're making on the earth. And, you made a really great example with soil, but it even extends out further than that, doesn't it? Looking at like offsetting, what could be an example there? Like, would that be things like planting more trees? Like if you've got the space, being able to, I mean, I know it sounds so simple. It's such a simplistic solution as such, but it's something as small as that. Or is that a possibility?
Yeah, or going back to the soil example, if you're going to turn the earth, then what are you putting back into it? So you things like, your teas that you make. And
so peppermint tea?
No, you don't do that. Like the bag, the comfrey teas and
the weed teas and things like that.
Or encouraging worms, or pocket planting and putting good manure on and compost and things like that. So what is that counteraction for what you're doing essentially?
That's it. Yeah, building that back up again. Yeah. And an example, really good example, is even with water and resources. So utilizing water storage instead of relying on your water coming in from an external source.
And then making the most of it. So like once it leaves your house in your grey water system, capturing that, using that, making the most of that before it leaves your property. And then in terms of not gardening sense, we don't have to, but you want to buy internet, so go with an ethical provider or a bank loan. Like, you can't these days get away with not having a bank loan unless you win the lotto. So what banks are you going to choose?
Exactly.
What, shoes and brands and things are you willing to support?
If you're going to invest, where are you investing your money?
Totally.
Is it with, an ethical company? Go and do your research. Yeah.
And even just supply chain stuff. So if you're going to buy bread, buy it at your local bakery or buy it at your farmer's market, or if you don't want to go to the effort or you don't have the capacity to make it yourself, buy with your ethics and with that in mind when you're doing these things. Like just the impact of shopping small and local.
Oh, that has a huge. Oh well, again, ask the local business owners if people, everyone in the local area is buying from there. So whether it is food or whether it's just your daily needs or gifts. I mean, we touched on that in the Christmas episode. Like it makes a big impact, and that makes people, and this sort of crosses over into people care a bit, but it does make an impact on those people, but it does make an impact on the earth as well. I mean, you've got less traveling, if it's in relation to food, it's food miles. So, there's so many things that you can do.
Yeah, and that's a good point you made. I think all of the ethics and somewhat principles overlap too. So we're obviously going to talk about other things and we might veer off, but
Us veer off, really?
No, never.
So let's go back to sharing resources. So I cut you off there.
Oh yeah, sorry, that was just one of the dot points. So yeah, sharing resources is like one of the ways that you can do earth care really well. So you're lessening your footprint because it's, like we're talking about food miles, you might only travel to one person, and you can share it out with your community.
Exactly.
It might be, I don't know, what are some other examples?
So really good examples is, let's say
you with your sheep.
With the sheep, yeah.
There you go. That's a good one that happened this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though I'm minimal chemical usage here, the fact of the matter is that the sheep do need to be drenched. They are wormy critters, and often they do have a heavy worm burden, and they are often really resistant to natural. I mean, they get apple cider vinegar with garlic in their water. They get diatomaceous earth in their feed. But I'm also really aware for their care as well that they need to be looked after. So what I did is I rang a neighbour who keeps goats and said, hey, what products are you using? When are you drenching? I mean, now's the time because it's as humid as hell. It is so muggy out there. And so, there's the worms are basically they're cycling through, they're doing their thing. So, yeah, I gave my neighbour a call and said, hey, can I buy or can I barter or trade a little bit of sheep drench for my 3 sheep? Because financially, for me, it's not viable to go and buy, and it's such a waste. So yeah, it's not me being frugal.
It's the same price whether you buy a small amount or a big amount. The big amount's just going to sit there. So you may as well, you're all buying it as a group now.
Exactly,
and that you use just what you need rather than buying a whole heap and it just sitting around.
That's it. And I mean, we traded. So I gave my neighbour some diatomaceous earth to use for her goats. She's going to give me some drench. We were meant to drench them yesterday, but I didn't pen them properly and they got out. Oopsies. So they were running around and they were not going to go back in. So that's a great example. But another example is things like sharing tools. If you...
especially in an urban context, because they've got a lot of these... I don't know if you might not be so aware of it being out here, but when we were in Mayfield, they had a share shed. And so they had this community project. They had a share shed, and you just book in to say, I need a lawnmower. Because especially like in winter, in an urban context where you're mowing once a month in winter, or if you needed a drop saw because you're doing a project, like there's no point in buying one, but the share shed allowed you to do that. There's heaps of those initiatives. Like that's just one random one that I remember when we were living there. But there are so many things like that.
And I mean, it's not just about then, like the storage or the maintenance. It's about the fact that one item has need to have been made, not 20 items. And then you don't have the maintenance of 20 items, which then uses more fuel and more oil and more things like that because they're getting used so much more as opposed to getting used when they're actually needed. The initial inputs into making those things. And that's the same thing. I mean, even out here, like if we don't have a tractor, we have a ride-on lawnmower, but if we need to we can only go so far with that. It's not like we're, spreading, manure across the paddocks with a ride-on lawnmower. But if we need a tractor, we've got 2 neighbours that have tractors. Sharing resources. I was, again, talking to my neighbour about we're wanting some cow manure that's untreated, that's from cows that haven't been drenched in the last few weeks and are antibiotic. That's it, antibiotic free and things like that. And she said, well, come down to my paddock with a bag and come and pick it up whenever you like. I'm like, that's fantastic. I'll give you some extra produce that I've got. It's just sharing.
And that leads into the next point that you had written down was about being frugal.
Yes.
That sharing resources and frugal goes hand in hand.
Frugal. And it sounds weird.
I find it challenging. I'm not gonna like some things I'm happy to be frugal about, and other things I think I'm still very set in my ways.
You kind of get stuck on this is how it has to be. But look, again, it's working out, and I'm going to credit Jade Miles from Future Steading for this, because this particular statement and this question that she used to ask her guests in all of her podcasts really set the framework for us for the last couple of years, and that is, what's your enough? So I the first time I heard her ask that, I went, oh yeah, that's a really cool question. And that's really about what being frugal is, it's not about being cheap. It's not about
Yes.
being,
But it gets a bad rap.
it does get a bad rap.
It's not eating egg and lettuce sandwiches every day necessarily.
Not unless you like them. Maybe your partner may not like them.
You got lots of eggs.
But yeah, exactly. It's not about being cheap or being stingy. It's about being smart with what you have, and whether that's being financially frugal. It's not buying lunch every day from the shop. It's make your lunch yourself. Buy the raw ingredients. It's going to go a lot further financially, but also you can control a lot more about what you're then consuming and what you're using, and the waste that goes into that as well. So there's this circular process that happens.
Touching on waste and being frugal, I think, old mindset me would be, the socks have a hole, so you throw them away, or the kids' pants have a hole in them, you throw them away. That concept of repairing and being frugal.
Yes.
I could go buy new socks. We have the money to buy new socks or new pants for the kids, but do we really need it? Because they're just going to go play in the yard and climb a tree and then put a hole in the other pair of pants I buy, or the other knee. So can we just patch them for now? Yeah. Like often with Addie, she's quite tall but skinny, so we buy the next size up, and I just sew a little pleat in the side, and then when she gets bigger, I unpick
just let it out,
rather than having to buy 2 lots of clothes in the space of however long.
That's it.
That she's going to grow out of so quickly, and it's not going to last her next season because the kids are so hard on their clothes. So just repair it and then let her keep ruining it and playing and being dirty and not being precious about our things sometimes.
I mean, it's common sense, isn't it?
I know, but you forget those things when you're in this consumer world, and it's just so easy when you're at Target or Big W or Officeworks or Bunnings to just pick up the extra thing and put it in your cart, or you're at Woolies and you're like, oh yeah, I'll have that bag of chips, like whatever it is. It's just so pushed on us all the time that it is so easy to not say no.
And it's never
to buy the thing.
It's absolutely. Everything is designed for us to be buying, and not just to be buying, but to want it so badly. It's that whole keeping up with the Joneses thing, isn't it?
FOMO, like missing out on Black Friday sales that have just happened,
I have so oblivious to Black Friday
sales. I have
not
bought one thing, and there's so many little small businesses that are boycotting it at the moment, and I'm like, yeah, you go. Like,
it doesn't need to happen.
Black Friday sales. Like, why? Why do we do these things?
I know. And because, again, people get into it, this frenzy, and they're buying and buying and buying. And, often they don't even realise that that's what's happening before it's happened.
I think that's kind of a good segue into minimalism and healthcare.
Yeah.
Just like, do you even need it in the first place? Moving into a caravan, they've got this thing in the caravanning community that whenever you pack your van for the first time, you put one of those little red sticky dots on it, on every single item. Once you use the item, you then take the sticky dot off. So then in 6-month mark, anything that still has a red sticky dot, you're like, well, I just don't need it because I haven't used it in 6 months. It does make you think about, what do I really need? Yeah. Like, do I need a NutriBullet and a Thermomix and a stick blender? Like, one appliance could do all of those things.
Absolutely.
Do I need an air fryer? Like, how big the air fryer trend is. Do you really need that appliance? Can something else do it? There's something to be said for redundancy, like having options and things, but
not just having for the sake of having because it's the newest thing out. It's, well, technology, when there's a new iPhone that comes out or a new Android, whatever the rest of you use. I've just outed myself as an Apple user on a Permaculture podcast. But yeah, it's this whole, like, I get emails all the time. Hey, it's time to update and upgrade, and you can get this one and that one that's got this camera and that. And I'm like, the one I've got works just fine. And I will continue to. Our fridge, we had the fridge guy, repair guy out the other day because the panels stopped working. Yeah. Now, he came out, it's basically shot, and we'd need to buy a new door. So our options are continue to use it, but we just can't change any settings because the fridge door works fine. Yeah. Replace the door, and that's going to cost, so many hundreds of dollars. And then the door that we have just goes into landfill. Or replace the whole fridge. And we went, well, okay, you know what? The fridge still works. So why are we doing anything? So we will just continue to use that until it dies. But then when it dies, it's going to then be repurposed as a storage area. Yeah. So, it's not going to go to landfill. It will get a new life here. And I suppose how do we see all that as being earth care? It's saving things from landfill. We're protecting the earth by not adding to the problem of all this disposable waste. And we're not adding to the problem of needing new things all the time. So it's the creation of those new things. It's the transport of those new things. It's the pollution that comes with all of that. There's so many, I mean, there's
I think
too many factors.
Enoughness is such a huge part of it.
Yeah. Oh, huge.
You know, even like on a very basic level, like you can get very carried away with buying seeds. Like, let's not talk about 10.
I don't know what you're referring to.
In this room does that. But do you know what I mean? Like, we're using big world examples of things that it's like, oh, it's easy to say no, maybe to a new iPhone if you're into that permaculture lifestyle living. But then, like, if you think about it in something that might challenge you a bit more, like not buying that plant or not buying those seeds and having a whole wardrobe full of seeds that I may never plant.
Exactly. It just becomes a waste.
To consumerism.
It sure is.
In a green way. Like, it's not harmful to buy cardboard packet of seeds with seeds inside. Like, that's not, contributing to, fossil fuels and those kinds of things. So, it's bad for the earth. Like, it's just a seed. But thinking about just general consumption.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Or buying new shiny raised beds versus repurposing something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you think about it on a more challenging people who are already in that lifestyle, there are so many things.
Well, like repurposing. I love repurposing. You've seen our junk piles.
Yeah.
We have multiple.
They're epic.
They're everywhere. But we're repurposing. Well, I'm going to get on my high horse here and say we're saving trampolines from landfill. So we are saving the lives of trampolines. But we are going around just on Facebook, on Marketplace, and we're getting as many trampolines as possible that are free to good homes, and we're going to repurpose those into exclusion tunnels. They're perfect for that. So it's going to be minimal input. The only thing that we need to buy essentially is the netting, maybe a couple of Rio bars or some stakes. The doors at the end, again, they're all either free or cheap off Marketplace or the side of the road or wherever we can get them. A lot of our friends will ring us and say, hey, we've done a reno. Do you guys want? And we're like, yes, give it all to us, because we can reuse it. And then that way, the things that do leave this property that go to landfill are the things that genuinely cannot be reused, repurposed, recycled, reconsidered, read anything, basically.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of important to think about that it's not just those large scale things, but
even like you talked about bread earlier. Like, I'm back to making my own bread. I'd stopped making my own bread for a while, but now because I found a really easy recipe, I might throw that up there as well.
Oh, yeah.
Such an easy recipe. But I've saved a whole heap of my old bread bags. And I mean, that's an old, depression times kind of thing. Something my grandmother used to do. She'd also save the foil and the cling wrap, and I mean every little piece. But I keep any of the fruit and veggie bags that we've had from even years ago, but bread bags, and I've got stacks of them, so that if I need to put a loaf of bread in there, I can actually use a bread bag for a loaf of bread. But it's also for lots of other different things.
We met this lady camping, and she was wearing this. It looked like an elf gnome hat, like it was a pointy cone. I was like, what the hell is that made out of? And we'd already made friends with her, and she rocked up the next day wearing this hat. And I was like, what is your hat made from? And it was like a woven, all of the hay baling string that had been made into a hat. Yeah. Apparently this guy in WA does it and sells them. And I was like, wow.
Brilliant upcycle.
Yeah.
I don't use mine that creatively. I use mine to tie stuff together in the garden.
Or for tomato steak.
Or for tomato steak, exactly. I'm not that creative. But like even that, feed bags. Like I've got a ton of animal feed bags that are in the shed. And my plan is to get back to using my sewing machine. And I'm going to repurpose those into totes. And then, I'll, either trade them for whatever, or I'll sell them for low cost, because that way then that helps to fund any extra feed that we need to feed the animals here. So it's not like we're making we're not making, a profit. Yeah, it's not consumerism, but it is it's a fair trade, and it's for a particular reason to support. Yeah. But I've got hundreds of them. So I'm going to be at the sewing machine for a while when I actually get started on that.
And then circling back to what we were saying the first part of the episode about the soil. So obviously soil care and soil health is a huge part of earth care.
Yeah.
Because so many of our actions, whether it's big ag, broad scale cropping, those kinds of things, are degrading the earth.
Absolutely.
And the soil structure and everything. But also, when you personally are building a house or renovating, like how do you mitigate that, or how do you limit how much the ground's going to be compacted, or what gardening methods are you choosing to make sure that you're taking care of the soil structure and your soil health. So I think the soil was like another whole part of earth care that you can then delve into.
It is. It's so big. I mean, there's so many avenues, but I love that you touched on that, because that brings us back to what the crux of permaculture essentially is, which is it is a design process.
Yeah.
It is a way in which you can work with nature rather than against it, to do things that supports the natural environment and supports the earth, supports the people, the animals, everything basically that's on the earth, and it does so in the most positive way possible. And so it's really distilling it back to making sure that whatever you choose to do is considered. You've looked at all of the factors, you've looked at how it needs to be used, why it needs to be used, what the potential issues could be in the future.
Yeah.
And allowing for those. Like, we sat and looked at your design for your new property fun. The other night. And, we had some really good conversation, because you're like, even when you were starting to talk me through it, you're going, oh, but hang on, I've got that there, but I'm not sure about this. And I think I might want to move that because of this and this, because you were then talking through it again, you discovered all of these things that you hadn't thought first time around.
Yeah.
And that, that happens then first time, second time, third time, fourth. And that's a normal part of the process, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think also with soil health is we're talking about like amendments and things, like what you're choosing not to use in your garden.
Yeah, that's a huge big part
of it.
Yep.
Not using sprays, not using, ways of watering that can even encourage erosion and moving of the topsoil. Are you mulching to make sure that your topsoil isn't getting dragged away with when you're watering, or with rains, and how you structure your garden with swales, or catching silt, or being able, there's lots of things in the design process that affect your soil health. How you create a dam, how you know what I mean? There's so much to it when you actually start designing your property that you can do to either not F up the soil in the first place, or to help keep it, retain it, and then the choices you make to make sure that you're not continually taking from the soil and not giving back as well.
Exactly.
Because the soil is one of the best indicators of life and health.
Oh,
not just in your garden, but on Earth.
It is, yeah. I mean,
period.
Anyone that's walked into a forest in areas that hasn't been disturbed, like it is teeming with life. And I mean, there's so many great resources out there for people to learn about the soil microbes and the life of the soil. And I mean, I don't, I just look at it and go, there's so much there. It totally blows my mind.
Yeah.
But it's certainly an area that people could really go and educate themselves more about.
Might put some book links and resources in the show notes for people who do want to delve into that, because it's like a whole rabbit hole to go down, really, isn't it?
There's tons. I mean, I've got books in there that I've read. I've got audio books that I've listened to that we've got tons of recommendations that we can put in there for you. Yeah.
Anything else we want to touch on?
I think we've covered quite a bit. We've it's really it's almost impossible to have a really in-depth discussion about all areas. So really this is just designed for an overview of, essentially what earth care means.
It's the topsoil of the soil. Like we're just skimming the surface here.
But
anyone just be like, what are you talking about?
Where is she going with the topsoil? But
it's just the surface. Yeah. Just the surface of what, earth care is. And there's lots and lots of political factors that come into earth care and, the government and all kinds of stuff. But keeping it just on that level of consumerism, thinking about what you're buying and purchasing and looking after the soil and being conscious of those things.
Yeah, minimizing
Minimalism
waste.
in general.
Minimizing waste, recycle, reuse,
Yeah.
all what is it?
It's like 7 of them now. Reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose,
repair.
There's heaps.
And I'm sure there's one more in there. Yep.
I think there's 6 or 7 now. Like, the list just keeps growing.
I mean, even if you just followed that.
Yeah, true.
Like as simple as that. If you've got something,
or refuse
and refuse. Refuse is the other one. And that's when we talk about the consumerism of do I actually need this?
Yeah, for sure.
That's been great.
All right, that's another week done.
Absolutely.
So we'll be unpacking the other 2 ethics in coming weeks in between some interviews, I think.
Yep, we've got some good interviews ready to go.
Yeah, we kind of threw it out there to some big name guests to see if they want to come on, and some are actually keen, believe it or not, to come and chat with us.
Must admit, had a little fangirl moment on a couple of those, so
it'll be good to have some chats with these people in the coming weeks. But that's it for today, I think.
Absolutely. I keep saying absolutely, but it is absolutely.
Absolutely.
We would love it if you were to jump into the Facebook group and let us know from your perspective, especially if you're starting out, or, well, not necessarily especially, if you're starting out in the middle of your journey, if you're a Permy diehard and you've been doing it for forever. But for you, what does earth care look like? What does that mean? And what questions do you ask yourself on a daily basis around how you're going to ensure that you're making the best decisions to support the earth moving forward?
And while you're there, if there's any other topics that you want us to talk about or people that you might want to hear from to interview, feel free to drop us a little comment in our Facebook group or even on Instagram when we're posting, because we love that feedback. But I think the group's where it's at, where you can kind of
it's good engagement.
Yeah, have good chats.
Yeah, and I mean, all our guests that we've got lined up, they're all in there as well.
So far, yeah.
There's a few people that have been around for quite a while and have a wealth of knowledge, far more than what we do.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. We hope this episode gave you some inspiration, confidence, and has helped you in your Permy journey.
So head to the show notes for all of the resources mentioned in today's episode. And if you like this podcast or this YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching, please remember to subscribe, rate, and share. And if you didn't, well, that's okay, because you'll find something that's out there for you. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.